Hi, I'm Nicole Christina, podcaster and psychotherapist. Now, here's a standard run-of-the-mill scarf. Nothing wrong with it. It gets the job done, but it's nothing special. There are a million of them out there. It's fine. It works, and it's nothing out of the, ordinary. And here is a hand knit scarf with hand dyed yarn, and it's one of a kind. It's special. There's no two like it in the world. Which would you rather wear? If you are a podcast host who interviews guests, you need to create interviews that are unique, memorable, and shareable. With millions of podcasts out there, you need to make sure yours rises to the top. So today I'm going to share some interviewing techniques that I have mastered as a result of being a psychotherapist for 30 years. And by the end of this talk, you will learn 7 skills that will elevate your interviewing immediately. You will become more than a podcast host. You will be a master podcast interviewer, and you will offer an experience to your audience that's unusual and that only you can offer. Your podcast has tremendous power to affect people all over the world, and people are so hungry to connect on a deep level. Because more and more connecting with others means sharing dog pictures with a Facebook friend you may not even recognize on the street. And we're mammals. We're wired to connect with one another. Humans have a deep need to feel heard and understood and to know that they are not alone. So by learning ways to cultivate an emotional connection with your guest, your audience will experience something much more valuable than pleasant chit-chat. They will feel like they're part of something important. They will come to count on you, and you will have an opportunity to impact and improve their lives. So don't underestimate your ability to influence your audience with your thoughtful and thought-provoking interview. Today, we're going to up-level your interview skills by going from chatting to having a real substantive and memorable experience. And those are the kind of experiences people want to share. Learning some basic interviewing skills allows you to get beyond the sound bites and canned responses and build an emotional connection with your guests and your audience. I'd like you to think about the conversation like a mini relationship. That way guests will open up and speak more honestly and be more vulnerable, and the conversation will draw the listener in. Your audience will wish that they were part of your conversation, and that emotional connection is gold. It's simply irresistible. Now, sometimes, of course, guests have been interviewed so many times that they just give back rehearsed answers. I had a guest who worked on TV, and I could not get beyond her memorized pitch. But that's really rare. Most guests have appreciated having more spontaneous and vulnerable conversations, and I hear that regularly. Actually, my husband teases me by asking if I made my most recent guest cry. I don't aim to do that, of course, but I do try to get underneath the surface. So let me tell you about an interview that illustrates this emotional connection in the extreme. Maybe you're familiar with the CNN story a while back about two women scientists who call their project Hearts in the Ice. These are two over 50 women. They're both grandparents, and they went to the high Arctic to do research on global warming. They had been living in a small hut without running water or electricity for 9 months. And they were 90 roadless miles from the nearest neighbor. Our interview was by satellite. The interview quality was terrible. It sounded like when the astronauts are speaking to Houston, but it was so emotionally powerful. And I went right for the emotional content. How was it to live with another human in a living space the size of a walk-in closet? How did they resolve conflict? And how would they readjust to civilization? And they had their dog with them. And I wondered, what was that like? So it was obvious that they were delighted by these kinds of questions because they had been asked, how did you eat? What did you eat? How did you go to the bathroom? In so many previous interviews. So at the end of the interview, I was so overcome with emotion, I had to compose myself. I mean, I couldn't believe I had spoken with women in the Arctic doing such important work, and by satellite, no less. Of course, not every interview is like this, and it doesn't always elicit this kind of reaction. But this gives you a taste of the power of a good interview. During our goodbyes, we were all emotional. They asked how I was doing in the political climate and the time of COVID. And it was kind of like having a conversation with a long-lost friend, warm, connected. And this interview offers my audience a really special experience. And to say it was fun for me is an understatement. So let's break down what I have learned about creating a memorable interview based on 30 years of being a psychotherapist. The first one, only choose guests who fascinate you. They don't have to be famous, but they have to be interesting to you because you can't fake passion. That's my secret sauce. I was so excited to speak with Sunniva from Hearts in the Ice and Hilde, I couldn't sleep the night before. That's a dramatic example, but I think you get the point. Number 2, I know you've heard this before, but you have to prepare because it gives you an edge. I watch my guests' videos, I study their websites, I read articles about them so I know what's already been asked. I want my interview to be fresh. Asking new questions makes it more fun for your guests as well, and then they're likely to share the episode. Bring your unique self to the conversation. You can feel the energy change when they are having fun and they're really engaged and they're not just answering your questions. One of the most common pieces of feedback I get is, wow, that was really fun. And I take that as a serious compliment. I believe listening to people having fun is fun too. But the ability to have fun means you have prepared. You haven't winged it. It doesn't make your interview more spontaneous to wing it. It actually makes it sound less professional. Remember, this isn't a chat at a cocktail party with your friends. It's got to be intentional. I make a rough outline just to help me feel confident, and you can always go off script. So preparing thoroughly really came in handy. Here's a good example. I interviewed Jo Mosley. She's a middle-aged mom who paddleboarded across the UK and picked up trash to draw attention to plastic use. I love those kind of guests. But she had been asked the same questions before. Oh, that's so cool. You paddleboarded across the UK. How did you do it? Tell me the story. but I had stumbled upon a little known detail that I knew my audience would love. In one of her interviews early on, she talked about having a nervous breakdown in the cookie or biscuit, as she calls it, aisle of the grocery store. Once I brought that up, the tone of the interview was so much more intimate. My guess is that she felt more understood, and she knew I took the time to learn about her, that I really got her. And I'm noticing now that in her interviews since ours, she brings up the mental breakdown at the grocery store because it's a great story. So it pays to read their books and go on their websites and know what makes your guests tick. It will give you an edge and your interviews will shine. Number 3, help your guests feel comfortable and secure. This is right out of the psychotherapy training books. I want my guests to feel comfortable so they open up and our conversation is more than chit chat. So I send my guests a PDF with instructions about what I need, including a short intro. And my correspondence looks professional. And the message is, I know what I'm doing. You're in good hands. I will respect your time. This will be mutually beneficial. I've done this before. I want my guests to know that just because I'm a psychotherapist, that doesn't mean I'm going to be analyzing them in our interview. And I also let them know, and this is very important, who their audience is. Educated, progressive women in middle age all over the world, so they can tailor their answers appropriately. They really seem to appreciate this detail. And it's our job to make our guests look great. Number 4, you've heard it before, but it's really hard. Listen, really, really listen. And it's occurred to me lately that sitting with a client in a session for 45 minutes with no devices is almost archaic. We just don't give people our full attention anymore. Listening deeply is not a skill that most of us are great at, especially now. But listening makes your next question obvious. Where's the emotion? Does their voice crack when they talk about certain things? Follow the emotional breadcrumbs. This is the time to forget your outline and go where the conversation takes you. Let them lead. Some of my follow-up questions are, how's that? In what way? Why now? What surprised you? Can you reflect on that a bit more? There's always more to be described or explained. The saying, the devil is in the details, is really true when it comes to interviewing. Invite your guests to elaborate. You'll be surprised what they come up with, and that's what makes your interview original and special. Avoid the temptation of talking too much. This is about your audience, not you. Always keep that in mind. And this is the same principle we use as psychotherapists, by the way. If it doesn't benefit your client, don't say it. Let there be silence. You don't need to fill up every second. A pause gives your guest a chance to say more about what's important to them. This is a well-known technique with professional interviewers. You'll be surprised what you hear. Number 6, beware, because not all experts are great talkers. You may have already learned this. If you're not sure your guest will be a good conversationalist, you've got to do a pre-interview. Even if they won the Nobel Peace Prize, nobody cares if they aren't good talkers. I once interviewed a filmmaker who had traveled all over the globe doing the most interesting and really dangerous work. She was a filmmaker, but when I had her on, she sounded so emotionless. We could have been talking about the weather. Lesson learned. Number 7, I learned this the hard way. know when to wrap up. Leave your audience wanting more. I used to get so excited about speaking to guests. I wanted to pump all the information out of them that I could while I had them. The interview would just kind of fizzle out at the end, and I guess I had a fear that my guest options would dry up, but now I've learned that 30 minutes is really a sweet spot, and there's an endless supply of guests. So using these techniques will help you develop a more genuine and emotional connection with your guests and also your audience. The audience will be brought in and they will really wish that they could be part of this conversation. You're leaving your listeners with a feeling that comes with being heard and understood. And in this way, they become attached to you and your show, because that's the feeling that we all crave as humans, especially these days. As the host, you're going to have regular pinch me moments because the interviews will be so interesting and rich. You won't believe how fun and satisfying it is to speak with people you're fascinated by, knowing that your conversations are heard all over the world and having a positive impact. You will have created art, something special that's uniquely yours. Thanks for your attention and happy interviewing.